During World War II, human trafficking and sexual slavery allegedly committed by the Japanese military may seem like something straight out of a history book. However, it is still a painful reality for 53 Korean women who say they are living proof that these war crimes did exist. 70 years later, these women are still trying to right this wrong, and students at one CUNY college are doing their part to give voice to these women before their stories die along with them. Korea in the late 1930s. The country was under Japanese occupational rule, one of several pawns captured in the net of the Japanese imperialist regime in its quest to dominate the region. It was a dark time in the history of this country, but even darker yet because of the testimony from these women who say they were forced to serve as sex slaves, also known as comfort women, for the Japanese army.
안녕하세요, 할머님.
16살 정도 됐어요.
Via Skype from their residence in South Korea called 나눔의 집, or House of Sharing, I spoke to two women who, despite their advanced age, tell with great clarity how they were taken against their will.
I kicked my feet and said, I'm not going.
And shipped off to unknown destinations and fate.
There were about 10 of us. We went on a train, and then I have no idea where they went.
In 1943, Yoo Hee-nam was 16 years old. She says as a young girl, she had heard horror stories about girls being snatched off the side of the road, but never dreamed it would happen to her. Her mother even arranged a marriage with a stranger, thinking that would protect her. But Yoo ended up in the hands of the Japanese.
Everyone was crying, other than to ask each other, who are you? Where are you from? We couldn't even talk to each other. We were so scared.
At first, she thought she was going to work at a factory as part of the Japanese war effort. Instead, Yoo ended up at a so-called comfort station, or brothel, in Shimonoseki, a coastal town in the south of Japan.
There were a lot of officers who came. The hardest thing for me was when I had to have sexual relations with them. It was hard.
Lee Ok-sun was 15 years old when she says two men accosted her as she was returning home after running an errand and threw her into the back of a truck.
One took my hands, the other my feet, and threw me up. I was thrown up high, and I fell hard. I was startled, of course, but it hurt so much, so I screamed and cried.
Lee remembers boarding a cargo train and after a long night's journey, ended up in Yeonbyeon, China. For a few days, she says she cleared a field at an abandoned airport. But when she kept demanding to go home, she says she was sent to a comfort station in downtown Yeonbyeon, where she was forced to have sex multiple times a day with soldiers.
In one day, we have to serve 40, 50 soldiers. Think about it. How many hours are in a day? How would we take care of 40, 50 people? It would have been better to die. They took young kids, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. What do those children know? These are just babies. And now they ask us to do this. It was so frightening.
And punishment was swift and brutal for those who didn't follow the rules.
Those girls refused to entertain the soldiers and wouldn't listen. They would line them up and slash them open with a knife. What else but blood would come out? Then the soldiers would just throw them aside.
세상에 얼마나 고통스러우면
How torturous was our life that we would commit suicide. People jumped from mountains, cut their necks.
염소가 아니에요.
I don't call it a comfort station. It was a slaughterhouse where they murdered people.
더 살짝.
Historians estimate there were about 2,000 comfort stations across Asia and up to 200,000 comfort women, the bulk of them Chinese and Korean, but there were also Burmese, Indonesian, Filipino, even Dutch and Australian women. Pregnancy and venereal disease were commonplace. Documents and testimony by former soldiers suggest that the Japanese military was involved in this large-scale sex slavery, perversely as a way to prevent rape crimes and venereal disease during the troops' deployment. The Japanese government has continued to deny any coercion, saying these women voluntarily entered into prostitution due to poverty.
Those Japanese are terrible people. They have no compassion. They say this is a lie. How could I be lying when they made us do horrible and shameful things? Just tell the truth. Say it was in the past. Our ancestors did it.
In the early 1990s, over 230 Korean women registered with the South Korean government as former comfort women. Today, just 53 remain. In 1993, the Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono issued an apology expressing remorse, and survivors did receive monetary compensation. However, the Kono statement remains controversial. The South Korean government, along with the victims, continues to press for an official apology. To this day, these women take turns at a weekly protest at the Japanese embassy in Seoul, unwavering in their demand that the government admits wrongdoing. On the other side of the world, at CUNY's Queensborough Community College in New York, historian Dr. Jimin Kim is doing her part to help these women press their agenda.
With the awareness of comfort women issue, I think that can be pressure on Japanese government and ultimately the official apology for the survivors.
Dr. Kim offers a 12-week internship program where students learn about the history of the region and the alleged war crimes.
Majority of the students didn't know about comfort women at all. They barely knew where Korea is.
But when the students heard for the first time the survivors tell their stories in this documentary, a few were visibly distraught.
It's difficult to put in words because I have cousins who's that young, and if they ever went through that, I don't know what I would do to myself, how I react. Like right now you can tell, I'm like...
Those students are very young and much potential. So many former students said that they changed their perspectives on war crimes and human rights after this program. And I think it has much potential to change the world.
The highlight of the internship is this Skype session with survivors.
갈 자리가 남았어요. 내가 이래 상처를 볼 적에.
Based on these interviews, the students create websites, poems, and artwork, which are temporarily displayed at the Kupferberg Holocaust Center on campus. The executive director says he has plans to make this a permanent exhibit.
We are imagining it to be based largely on stories at this point. So the stories, the life stories, the testimony of the victims, also to make it relevant through showing the women as they live today and how it informs and ultimately, ideally, opens their eyes to the connections between various groups and the dangers of allowing hatred and prejudice to grow unchecked.
After the Japanese Empire was defeated at the conclusion of World War II in 1945, the comfort stations were abandoned. Reportedly, many of the women were killed. Others made their way back to their homeland. Li decided to stay in China.
Why didn't I ever go looking for my family? I had a sign on my forehead that said comfort woman. How could I possibly go with that shame?
Yu never saw her family again either. She married, had 5 children, and kept her secret hidden from everyone until she was one of those who registered as a former comfort woman. Her daughters have not spoken to her since.
They said, "How did this happen? We have to all take medicine and die together." I still regret it. Why didn't I just die? By keeping my silence, I spoke out, and now my children wouldn't talk to me.
Now, Li and Yu live with other survivors at Nanumijib, or House of Sharing, which is both a museum and residence for former comfort women. Yu has cancer. Li has medical issues stemming from her traumatic past. Both know they do not have much longer to live. Their one wish is to die knowing that their dignity has been restored, if not for themselves, for the memory of those who went before them. To this day, textbooks in Japan make no mention of comfort women, which many have denounced, calling it revisionist history. I'm Minnie Roh for Asian American Life.